we come to the second part of spiritual fitness is in order to be spiritually strong, you've got to take spiritual inventory of yourself. You got to take a look of what's going inside of you, because what's coming inside of you is the power that's going to come out of you. Because we are creatures, all man is created in the image of God, and we are designed by God to live from the inside out. We live from the inside out. And so your outside world is a direct reflection of what's going on the inside of you. Now that's pretty serious. So you don't like what's going on in your outside world, then it's time to take a look inside. What's going on inside of me? Is it anger? Is it bitterness? Is it frustration? What's inside of me? Because what's inside of me is what's going to be produced out of me. So you got to take a spiritual inventory. Matthew 6 and Mark 4, Jesus says that your eye gates and your ear gates, those are how you get things into your spirit. And he said it's out of the spirit that flow the forces of life. That's what Proverbs 4:23 says. Above all that you guard your heart with all vigilance, for out of it flows the forces or the power of life. All that's coming from here. Mark 6, Jesus says that the eyes are the windows in, and that what light you let in is what's going to come on the inside of you, is going to come out of you. He said if you're letting dark light in, now I think that's an interesting concept, dark light. Well, he's not talking about these kind of lights. He's talking about revelation, understanding, what you've given your attention to. So if you let darkness come in, if what you're looking at is darkness, it's evil, it's ugly, it's angry, it's whatever, lustful, whatever it is, he said, then how great is the darkness that's going to be on the inside of you? And he says, in the Gospel of Matthew, he says that either make the tree good or make it evil. So what you put on the inside of you is what's going to fling out of you. He said a good man out of the good treasure of his heart is going to fling forth good things. An evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart flings forth evil things. And so he said either make it good or evil. And so that's what he's talking about. You in your eye gates in Matthew 6, he's saying what you're letting in here is what is going to come down into the spirit. And from the spirit is what's going to come out of you. In Mark 4, he's talking about what you hear. There's your other gate into your heart. He said, what you hear, he said, take heed for the thoughts that you think, because the measure of thought and study that you give to the things that you hear is the measure of virtue or power that's going to be at work in your life. If you're thinking a lot about the negative, about the ugly stuff, about the anger, about the hatred, about the lust issues, about the whatever it is, the trouble at work, whatever it is that you're stirring up and you're thinking about constantly, it's going to come down into your spirit, because that's a gate into your spirit. It's going to come out of you, and it's going to result in your life. You're going to see the benefits of it. Anxiety, panic attacks, stress, frustration, you name it. Jesus is saying, guard your eye gates, guard your ear gates, because what you let go on the inside of you, that's what's going to come out of you. That's the power that's going to be released. Proverbs 4:23, above all that you guard your heart. Take a spiritual inventory. What am I watching? Who am I hanging around with? What am I speaking out? What is going on in my life? Because what you're allowing in is what's going to come out of you. It's going to be the results of your life. And the third part was, in order to become spiritually strong, you've got to exercise. You've got to begin to exercise your muscles. If you don't actually put pressure on your muscles, they'll never begin to develop. A baby is born with every single muscle that you're born with, but they can't even hold their head up. And when they're first born, they can't even control the movements of their body. They just spastic out there, man. I've seen so many Christians just spazzing out there. Just not even kidding about that. We've got to begin to develop our muscles on purpose. And we've learned that trials, tests, and temptations come in order to strengthen our spiritual muscles. They come in order to make us spiritually strong. And it's our decision in those tests, in those trials, in those troubles, it's our decision that determines whether we're going to build muscle or whether we're going to get a backache. ow, and sit out for the rest of the time. I'm telling you, it's better to go through. It's better to take the pressure because it's not going away. There's a devil out there. Isaiah 54:16 says, I've created the smith who blows on the coals of the fire, which produces a weapon of perfection. And what God is saying is, I'm not bringing the trials or the tests. There's a devil out there. He's doing it. But if you will recognize that I'm the creator, then you will come out of this as a weapon of perfection. I will use the fire to bring out the impurities, to bring out the trouble that's inside of you, the things that are hidden deep within you. And I will test your character, and I will try it, and I will make of you a weapon of perfection. He's saying, I created the one who heats up the fire. What he's saying is, I can handle him. I remember, and I've shared this with some of you, a couple years ago at Easter, I was up praying and just talking to the Lord about different things in my life. And he gave me this verse of scripture. And I felt like I was just being tested and just like trial after trial. Like it just was hard. Everything was hard for me. And I was praying about it. And he gave me that verse of scripture in Isaiah 54:16, where it says, I have created the smith who blows on the coals of fire and to produce a weapon of perfection. And when he said that, he began to show me, he said, Rebecca, he said, I am the blacksmith. And he said, and I hold your spirit and your soul in my hands like a piece of raw ore, like a piece of iron. Iron by itself, without being tried in the fire, is clunky and heavy, and it can do a little, but it can't go very far. It breaks. It's susceptible to rust. There's all kinds of trouble that's with iron. It's heavy, hard to handle. He said, but I take the iron and I put it in the fire and I increase the heat of the fire. He said, so that all the impurities can come out. And as all those impurities come out, he said, I, as the blacksmith, I begin to hammer. I hammer away at those things inside of your character, inside of your thinking, those strongholds that have been there for generation after generation. You didn't even come up with it. It's been there for hundreds and thousands of years. And I begin to hammer those things out in you. And he said, if you will let me, if you will stay in my hands, he said, Rebecca, I want you to know my hands are steady. My hands are sure, and I will not drop you. I will not drop you in the fire. He said, so many of my people get under pressure and they jump into the fire. And he said, if they would stay in my hands and let me finish the perfecting work that I've started in their character, they would become vessels of honor, fit and ready for my use. If you will stay in my hands during these hot, fiery trials and tests and temptations, he said, I will work in you character that I can use. And you will be a weapon of mass destruction for our enemy. I'm telling you, he's saying that not just to me. He's saying that to every believer. If we will not be afraid, if we will stay in his hands during testing and trials and temptations, recognize that it's the devil, but recognize our Father is his creator, and he's bigger and better, and his plan for us is good. His plan is to perfect us. Man, after the iron has been through the extreme hot and a lot of pounding and a lot of pounding, it becomes beautiful steel. It becomes beautiful and shiny and thin and lightweight and more powerful than iron ever was before. And now it's not susceptible to breaking. It's not susceptible to rusting. It is a weapon of destruction, of perfection. But it had to go through the fire. It had to go through testing and trials and temptations. And it had to stay in the master's hands, the master craftsman. Jesus is our master craftsman. His hands are steady. His hands are sure. Let him begin to work in us and exercise our forces of life.